mind if we make a start now, because we have so many distinguished speakers, it would be wrong to cut the time down later on. Colleagues and friends, we are again making our protest at the despicable actions of the mullahs regime as they continue the pressure on Nouri al-Maliki to further intimidate and threaten the people of Ashraf. This pathetic puppet of the mullahs has been condemned throughout the free world for acting under the orders of the Iranian regime. We welcome the recent appointment of Jean de Wright as Special Advisor to the European Union on the issue of Camp Ashraf. The appointment by the EU's Chief of Foreign Policy, Baroness Ashton, she's actually fulfilled something when we went over, some of us went over and pressed the European Union for such an appointment, and I'm delighted that Baroness Ashton has fulfilled not only our wishes but her promise. We wish him, Mr de Root, well as he pursues his brief to assist the international community to find a lasting solution for the residents of Camp Ashraf. I think our government should start to look at its own principles. They should see that as this deadline at the end of the year is coming for the people of Ashraf, all the recent signs are that the regime, through its puppet in Iraq, is preparing to end this worry that they have that these 3,400 people are a threat to their stability. Colleagues, I think it's time the United Kingdom actually backed Madam Rajavi in her call for the United Nations to do something positive. We want the United Nations in Camp Ashraf.
It's very good to be back here to reiterate support we have known in the past of the threats that exist against the unarmed residents of Camp Ashraf. We now face the spectacle of an illegal timeline set out by the Iraqi authorities, which, if not stopped, if not remedied, 3,400 of our friends, unarmed Iranians, to whom we provided guarantees to protect, and for whom international law demands we protect, will be at grave risk. Because we know the record of Mr. Maliki, we know his close and deep association with those people in Tehran. We know the risks of that association for the people of Ashraf. And that's why it is so important, and was so important, that the EU took the important step of appointing Baroness Ashton as an EU envoy. It's why it's important that the United Nations recognise those residents as asylum seekers. The banner behind me talks about the role of the UK, US, the EU and UN. And in the good tradition of being a liberal internationalist, I again reiterate the call that was put forward so eloquently by Lord Clark for this government to take this matter seriously. I was there in the House of Commons the night the prescription of the PMOI was lifted. That was a proud moment. Many of you were outside the House of Commons celebrating that night. I also want to think and reflect on the human rights issue with a report into human rights abuses in Iran. And there's one image that sticks on my mind more than any other. I used to be a primary school teacher in rural West Wales. I used to teach 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds in a little school in Wales. It was the spectacle of a 10-year-old boy, the age of the children I used to teach, obviously being incited to take part in a murder, a public hanging. And that image has stuck in my mind. And as long as that record continues and perpetuates in Iran, there will be good case and good cause for this movement. That was the rallying cry of Madame Rajavi at the big rally I had the privilege of attending with others on this platform in Paris. a twin duo message. One, meaningful protection of Camp Ashraf and its 3,400 residents. And second, the peaceable, democratic liberation of Iran.
Once again, we are standing here as parliamentarians to show our disgust with the situation being faced in Ashraf. I couldn't go the other day to Brussels when Madam Rajavi, who I've got great respect for, spoke so strongly, and many others did. So I'm just going to say that we have many speakers here to speak, to be followed by many eminent speakers and people who have got the measure of the situation. And can I say that not just here in the UK, but parliamentarians throughout the world in the European Union feel the same. And I'd say, Mr. Chairman, how is it that so many parliamentarians feel so strongly for the people of Camp Ashraf, yet we as parliamentarians continue to be ignored? So I look forward after today once again, and it is encouraging that we've seen some progress through the United Nations, through the appointment, through the establishment of the residents as being officially acknowledged as asylum seekers. That is encouraging. Surely we can build on that. And I know it's a great honour to follow Mark Williams, and like him, my good friend Mark Williams, others have said, surely this now gives us a firm basis to say enough is enough, and we must respect the human rights of the people in Camp Ashraf. And I say again, I believe, and somehow we must get the message out to our people in this country, this is wrong and outrageous, and I'm sure if we had their support, they would be very helpful to the cause. And thank you very much for asking me to speak.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I do not want to repeat everything that Mark Williams and Lord Cotter have said so eloquently. I agree with every word they have said. I am the lead. It has recently been confirmed by the United Kingdom courts that a British civil servant, for example, someone working for the security services or a member of the armed forces, is subject to UK human rights standards abroad. Now, that's a welcome principle, but it doesn't apparently apply to other people. And so what is happening at Camp Ashraf is the most outrageous, manifest, repeated, day after day, attack on civilized standards. Article 3 of the Convention prohibits, and this is an absolute right, torture, inhuman and degrading treatment. But look at what has been happening at Camp Ashraf. They're being deprived of available good quality medical treatment. They're being assailed with noise. They're being assaulted. They are being deprived of just about every civilized right, which if it came before the administrative court, the High Court of England and Wales, would be deemed as an outrage on the part of our government. Yet I'm afraid, and here we come to our interests, we as a country are conniving in this. And what I do say to you is, I have evidence, I'm not going to deploy it this morning, but I have evidence of appeasement by the British government of the mullahs. It's as simple as that. There are attitudes and decisions which show that the British government, because apparently there are some trade interests which they wish to sustain in Iran, are prepared to go to pretty extreme lengths not to offend the rulers of Iran. It's an outrage now to appease the mullahs in any way whatsoever. The British government is being left behind in this. If you look at the attitudes expressed by President Obama in recent weeks, and I do not acquit the Americans of a form of appeasement until recent weeks, President Obama has made it clear that the United States will now have no truck whatsoever with the government of Iran. So my message to the UK government is abandon all forms of appeasement. there is nothing to be gained from it. The government of Iran is not only an evil government dedicated to the abolition of human rights and to the most appalling human rights outrages, which are being translated, of course, into the Iraqi government's attitude to Ashraf, but there is nothing to gain from the defence of our interests there anymore. And I hope that joint action by the bodies which are mentioned on the banner behind me will lead to some alleviation of the plight of the residents of Ashraf. I welcome the appointment of Baroness Ashton, whom, by the way, I like and admire greatly and regard as a friend. It needs clear statements from the heads of government throughout the EU to ensure that everything possible is done to prevent these outrages.